All right, welcome again, everyone. We're just starting to see people roll in.
Welcome to Gray Panthers of East Bay, Berkeley and East Bay. I'm Rains, and this is Betsy.
Carol, my indomitable co-convener, is signing in from Elmwood Nursing Home on Shattuck Avenue across from Berkeley Bowl, if anyone would like to visit her. So it's wonderful that she could make it in.
Great to see other board members like our treasurer, Robert,
Yes.
and Maria Soul.
Oh, excellent. If any of you care to put your pictures in, that's always lovely. Welcome, Willie Phillips. Welcome.
You don't mind I don't put my picture in? I'm not presentable.
Oh, Willie, it's great to have your hearing voice. Live from West Berkeley is Willie Phillips. And who do I see any new names? If anyone wants to, let me just warm up a little bit. Pamela White, thank you, wonderful. I don't know if we're going to get Arlene Hip today, but I'm hoping. We'd had a bounty crop of RSVPs, just so you know. Usually many people don't. Deb, where are you coming in from? If we've met, I'm sorry, I've forgotten.
It's okay. I'm coming from Oakland is where I live, but work in Berkeley. I'm with Healthy Black Families.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you for coming in. I actually wanted to make a short announcement about that. So we're just starting to roll and we're recording. If anyone needs it turned off or paused, let me know or let Rains know through chat. He's my partner in crime and fellow board member.
I'll just also remind people that we have captioning available if it helps you in following along. Just hit the CC button, or sometimes it's hidden under more in your Zoom options at the bottom. You can choose either to hide them if they're distracting or show them if they're useful. And we're here to support and connect.
Hey.
And I'm just very excited because this is one of like a dozen events that we've got going in the next month. We're bringing attention to a lot of partner events, election forum, candidate forum with the California Alliance of Retired Americans, CARA, so both in person and Zoom options. And we'll be participating in the Solano Stroll on September 8th. Got a wonderful booth location right at the top of Solano and some easy ways to come and be a part of that. And so hopefully, relatively safely in the outdoors, gather together and advance our causes. So we'll look for a lot more opportunities, and to keep an eye on the calendar at eastbaygraypanthers.org and your emails to hear about some of those. So be hearing from us a little more than usual, I think, in the time ahead.
Yeah. Welcome, Susan Runyon, our member from the field. Michael, I'm not sure which Michael you might be, and welcome Sandy Cruz, I think a newcomer to our monthly calls. So I'll start again. I'm Betsy Morris. I'm co-convener of the board. We have a great mix of members, board members, of course, members, and some visitors today. I wanted in particular, and we'll get going with our speakers in about 10 minutes. I wanted to say thank you, Deb, for being here from Healthy Black Families, because one of our advances this last month is we signed a memo with a small team from the Berkeley Ecology Center, and it's for Gray Panthers to be a community partner on and I'm blanking on the exact title of it. It's something like the community health and safety, or safety and disaster plan, part of our general plan, and also part of the community the point of this partly is we're glad to be doing this relationship. We have a formal relationship, and Healthy Black Families is also one of the community partners. And as community partners, both organizations will be getting the word out to make sure that the people in our communities know about how to participate and become part of the planning process. And plans are only as good as they're carried out. So Deb, did you want to say something about this particular project from Healthy Black Families, or your point of view? You don't have to, but you're welcome to say a couple.
I think it's great. Yeah, I think it's great. Look forward to the partnership. And health and safety is, one of the key to a community. Yeah. So the more partners, the better.
Disaster preparedness, safety, and emergency plan. So we're the ones who will make the connection to health, I think. But our community partners, us, yeah. So I don't think there's any events for that this month, but we will be letting our members and all community members know, and I hope we can complement each other. Healthy Black Families, such a fabulous organization, and Gray Panthers. So, all right. Thank you. We also have a visitor from Munich today, Anya, was curious about social activism here in the US and somehow got a notice. And David Blake, our board member, welcome. Good to see you.
Can I bring you greetings briefly from Carol Crooks?
Yes, she's here in person as well.
I supplied her with enough power that she could zoom in on her phone. Good. Fantastic.
And yes, I'm I'm getting chat reminders. So we are now in a state, our board, every year we have rotating board positions, and we are officially naming nominations are open for the Gray Panther board. The qualifications are that you are up to date on your annual dues, which entitles you to vote in the election and also to serve on the board. So if you're curious about what the board does, we're holding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but next week we'll have a combination of board meeting and social time, if that's feasible, for anyone who'd like to come. Next Wednesday, we'll be announcing where and when, but we usually have a social coordinated by Carol at Halacio's Cafe on the corner of, what is that, Parker and Sacramento at 1:30 on the second Wednesday of each month. But we're hoping to do some activity, a short social and more of a board meeting this Wednesday, location to be announced. Is that clear? So if anyone's curious about
Halacio's, we need to change to 1 o'clock to 3:30.
Oh, right. Okay. So that,
I just want to announce that because people need to get enough notice that they don't forget that the time has changed.
thank you, Carol. So we always welcome people keeping in touch. There's Norma. Welcome, welcome. All right, let me make sure I've covered any of our essential announcements, and then we'll get going shortly. Okay, we wanted to welcome a new member. Our newest member is Christy Martin, who's not here right now, but we'll be introducing. She can introduce herself at another meeting. If you are interested in becoming a voting member of East Bay Gray Panthers, please look at the website under join or donations. We have a $35 a year requested donation, but that is goes as low as $5 a year for a hardship. We understand not everybody's flush. And you would send a check or to our Robert McGarrian, our treasurer, send a check to East Bay Gray Panthers at the P.O. Box on the website. Robert, you want to, are you able to say hello? And he can also.
Okay, I'll unmute myself so I can say hello.
And you can also meet him next Wednesday if all goes well, if you want to come to the board meeting social. I wanted to announce that, let's see, we're almost there. There is a Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act Town Hall by Berkeley Tenants Union. This is a measure that would allow, that would require that landlords notify their tenants when they want to sell the building, so that tenants can collectively organize to purchase the building with help of community partners. So there's a Yes on TOPA Coalition meeting and town hall this Saturday at the South Berkeley Senior Center from 10 to 12. And the one other event that is not yet on our calendar, but the one other event I want to announce is that on September, if all goes well, Wednesday, September 11th, there'll be a special senior fraud and legal issues abuse senior fraud conversation with District Attorney Pamela Price, and her office is trying to work that out for the South Berkeley Senior Center, but we'll put up that on our East Bay Gray Panther website as soon as we have the details. We'd hoped to get her for one of our public speaker meetings, but that wasn't possible. So we know this information is really important. So look forward to sharing that update with you all. But September 11th, Wednesday, it's 10 a.m. in the morning is their current plan. In person at the South Berkeley Senior Center conversation.
Tentatively.
10. Yeah. I think if anyone can work it out, she can. Okay. Well, I think we're now ready to begin. We've got a good 24 people here, and I want to thank and welcome everybody on behalf of the East Bay Gray Panthers, everyone who's a member and everyone who's considering joining. We have no age limits. There is no minimum age. There's no maximum age. We welcome, age and youth together. So thank you all.
I just put this in, you got about 15 notices on the emails that this meeting is happening. I plugged into 6 of them and I didn't find a connector to the meeting. I had to call Rains. I did find one screen that had his phone number on it, and I had to phone him and ask for a link, and I got it, and that's why I'm here. And I thought maybe he should post it as Gray Panther meeting today, which he said, and see if we're.
Thank you, Norma. Yeah, thank you for alerting us. The same link was on every invitation and also on our website.
I didn't find it on 6 of them. So.
Yeah, I think it was badly
ensconced in a whole lot of other graphics and options and RSVP and.
Yep, we'll work on that. But in general, the join button is there.
All right. Well, put it up separately, Rains, in case anybody else is looking for that.
Thanks for the feedback, Norma.
Thank you.
I'm going to now would like to introduce our first speaker today, Xavier Johnson, who is with us, and we'll try to feature you. All of you can go to speaker view if you'd like. We'll pin you. So Xavier Johnson is been a housing activist and leader here in Berkeley for quite a few years now. He's a lawyer, a tenant lawyer, an anti-eviction lawyer who used to work with Centro Legal. He's a member of our rent board, our elected rent board, running for a second term. But we do not endorse particular specific individual candidates here, but we are supportive of the Berkeley Tenants Union Convention and are part of the selection process for people who run. So, but more than that now, Xavier has been chair of the Housing Action Commission. I'm actually a little mixed up on the name, but the point is he's been actively involved in affordable housing policy and decision-making for many years, and lives in Berkeley, has much other experience he can tell us about. And he's currently Director of Policy Justice at an organization that was new to me. So I'd like to hear more about it. Why don't you introduce yourself and your organization, Xavier? And we'll make sure to highlight you. And thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. I don't think I'll go more into my own individual qualifications, but I will mention a bit about the Just Cities Institute. So the Just Cities Institute was an organization that was founded in sort of the legacy of Ron Dellums, under the idea that the folks who are most directly impacted should be the ones right at the seat of the table making the decisions on how to solve the problems. So everything that we do, we emphasize the communities that have been impacted. We give them money and time to hear their perspective and hear their stories. And then we translate what their experiences are into meaningful policy solutions. And that's the model we use for all of our policy making at the Just Cities Institute. And that's the model that's been used for what I'm here to talk to you about today for the reentry housing plan. We surveyed through funding through the state of California. We actually did interviews and focus groups with a number of formerly incarcerated folks, and we worked with organizations that are led by formerly incarcerated people to identify what are the barriers that are preventing people from getting access to housing as they're exiting the incarceral system. And so throughout the plan, everything has been crafted with formerly incarcerated people at the forefront of the conversations, and with the insights that they've had designing the policies shaped by our expertise as Just Cities staff. So with that, I have a brief presentation I wanted to show. And I think I already have sharing access, so I'll go ahead and.
Actually, yes, you do. And Xavier, could you slow down a bit?
Yes, I'm so terrible about that. I get so excited and I just.
So we have so much time, and I'm looking forward to your presentation. So, but thank you.
Okay, can you folks see this?
And we also have people who are not who don't have a visual. So if you'll explain just describe each image, and remember, not all of us can see it. So
okay,
thank you.
But can folks who are able see it currently? Betsy?
I can see it.
Yes,
Okay.
we see
If
it.
anyone can't see it, raise your hand or
Adjust your Zoom settings.
adjust.
Yeah.
You want to tell them how to adjust their Zoom settings?
I don't know.
Waynes?
They can see it. Keep going.
Okay. Well, I'll verbally explain it either way. So this slide talks about the goals of the Alameda County
So
Reentry Housing Plan.
fast.
And
Yeah.
essentially there's four main kind of goals that we had, which is to provide a policy roadmap for Alameda County that includes recommendations on funding sources as well as action steps they can take in the legal space to make an impact in folks' lives. The goal is to reduce barriers to stable and affordable and dignified housing for formerly incarcerated residents, and to build and expand on the work of reentry organizations that have been on the ground seeing the challenges day in and day out and recognize where the barriers and challenges are. And the whole project centers and develops leadership of formerly incarcerated folks and their family members throughout the process. Really, it's all about kind of the spirit of equity and inclusion as well as justice is kind of the main focuses for the project. So some historical background, 73% of Oakland encampment residents have reported having a conviction history. Whereas of the AB 109 clients who are referred to housing services, only 11% of them are actually given access to permanent and stable housing. So there's a huge gap of who's getting access to housing and who's not getting access to housing. And while this context is taking place, only less than 1% of all the affordable housing units built with Measure A1 were actually dedicated to reentry housing. Despite this fact, we have about 20% of the Alameda County residents who have a conviction history of some kind. And so they're being really not catered to and kind of shut out from the housing system. And all this is a
Excuse me,
racial justice.
Xavier, could you actually give some numbers as well as percentages? Just how many people, because I think a little background on the ending or attempts to end mass incarceration, how many people are we are we attempting to re-enter? How many people have come to Alameda County? What is 73% of what number, if you don't mind, just for context?
So that's of all the that's based on the residents and the encampments that we've surveyed. So they surveyed a number of different locations, and of the people who responded to the survey, 73% said that they had a conviction history. So it's not, I don't think it's surveyed every single encampment in the city of Oakland. I think it was just like a random survey of those who are in the encampments. Okay, so this kind of discusses the process that we went through. We worked with the focus group of formerly incarcerated folks, as well as interviews with formerly incarcerated residents. We actually partnered with the county's Community Corrections Partnership Committee meeting, which has as its goal a stated desire to increase the access to housing for formerly incarcerated folks. And then we also worked with reentry service providers and community scholars. The community scholars were formerly incarcerated people that we paid to offer their perspectives and give their time, and also to help design the policy solutions collectively with us. And so there was essentially 4 key areas that folks came up with as the areas of highest need. The first was prioritizing affordable housing opportunities for reentry population. So ensuring that the county and city governments are giving points to projects and proposals that are helping formerly incarcerated folks to be able to succeed. And the real goal there was set to be 20% of the funding to be dedicated to reentry populations, because about 20% of the population has a conviction history of some sort. The second strategy was transformative reentry services. So for a lot of folks, the barriers they were facing were not having the right skill set or the tool set to actually navigate the housing system. Many folks have been incarcerated for years and decades and don't have access to like computing technology or online tools. They're not familiar with it. They've never had to use it in their lifetime. And so they're exiting and aren't being fully trained or equipped to actually navigate the new housing space. Additionally, peer advocates have also been super helpful in the organizations that do provide services right now. They help people to navigate those complex housing situations and the complexities of even submitting an application. Things as simple as providing identification through a driver's license. Folks have not had access to the driver's license or long-term documents to prove their identity either. So there's a lot of spaces and places where there's different supports that need to be put in place. In addition, a big support area is mental health services and substance abuse services. Many folks who've been incarcerated have deep trauma from being incarcerated and from before they were incarcerated in the first place. And so looking to provide services to them to really help them to navigate that, so that if they do get access to housing, they can stay in that housing. The third strategy was investing in human-centered transitional housing experience. And what that means is that, like, right now, the transitional housing spaces that are available, they have short windows of time for folks to get access to housing when they're exiting. They also have a lot of restrictive rules that don't really put in place human needs. And some of the rules don't even make any sense. So some of the spaces prevent the usage of computers, but folks to apply for housing, they need access to computers for a lot of the housing opportunities that are out there. And so we wanted to kind of rework the system and promote some of the more community-centered, empowering and liberating sorts of housing models, as opposed to the big corporations of transitional housing services where they aren't really investing in people and they don't really honestly even care about the folks that they're housing. And then the final strategy is a continuation of work we've been doing. It's getting a fair chance ordinance passed in Alameda County. We got so close to it previously, but the change in the makeup of Board of Supervisors as a result of one of the members passing away and another one terming out, essentially, those set back us getting this passed at the county level. And so we still have to do work to get fair chance housing passed at the county level. And for those of you who are not familiar with fair chance housing, it basically prohibits the landlord using conviction history checks in most instances of the application process for housing. So it frees up opportunity for formerly incarcerated folks to get access to housing. And I can take a pause here to answer questions and give more context if that's helpful too, but.
Well, I wonder if you could put up, I mean, I can do it, but if you can put up your Just Cities website, I can do that, because I think it's a pretty amazing message, because it's about love on the first page that I see. And so it makes it a very unique, even for nonprofits to speak about that. And Buna Chima, who many people here may know her name, is one of the founders. So I don't know if you're able to just share that. And then perhaps you could, yeah, and is that possible? Or can I put that up? And then I'm also,
Maybe I can share at the end.
Okay. If anyone, the website link is in the chat for those of you able to use chat. Kelly Hammergren, your hand is up, and then I see Willie. So this is the interim questions while we. Kelly?
Okay, I had to unmute. So the transitional housing, how long can people stay in transitional housing? I mean, I've heard it's like 2 weeks or something.
It depends on the specific housing space, but I think a lot of them have around a year.
Okay.
But I'm not certain about that 100%. But I know that we discussed that a year was not long enough for folks to be able to stay.
And the question that Betsy asked earlier about numbers, I mean, how many people are we talking about in total who are homeless?
So the total homeless numbers, I don't have those. I can give those to you all through a follow-up email. I just don't have.
If I can answer that, I looked it up real quickly, and they gave a figure from June of 2024 in Oakland. I asked for homeless and encampments. They gave me the number of 5,490. And I worked a rough 73% of that. This is not accurate, but it's about 4,000 people.
Thank you for that.
And we should recognize that's just the city of Oakland. Berkeley,
correct. The
numbers kind of get shifty, but let's say there's 2,000 people or 1,500 at any time at any given day. So what is that, like 1,000, 1,200, So Willie, you also raised your hand. And then I also see, thank you, Kristen. Did you make your point? Okay. And then Maria Soul after Willie.
I want to take the time to welcome Xavier. And I realize the very fact that there's a history here. How's Margaretta Lynn?
She's doing well.
Good. Tell her hello for me.
Will do.
I wanted to acknowledge the very fact is, what's the demographics in terms of race, in terms of people that are incarcerated, that are coming out, that need homes?
Yeah, I didn't actually explicitly say it, but it's disproportionately Black and brown folks who are incarcerated in the first place. And actually so much so that the state of California has found that if you're just blanket discriminating against formerly incarcerated folks, you're by its very nature discriminating against Black and brown folks. So it's a disproportionate crisis for people of color.
And
thank you.
And seniors. And people are aging in prison, and so we're welcoming people, as well who are. I don't know if we count in the same way, but it's a crisis.
Yeah,
it's a piece of the puzzle.
One of the things we saw over and over again is that the access for folks who are exiting the incarceral system who are elderly, they, like, as I mentioned earlier, they oftentimes don't have the training with the technology that we have that exists today. But at the same time, the jobs that do exist for formerly incarcerated folks where there are opportunities for employment, a lot of them are like very labor intensive and require a lot of like moving of heavy things. And that's not necessarily something that some of our exiting seniors are able to do. So there's less opportunity for them to just find employment.
Thanks. Maria has her hand up as well.
Yes, thank you so much, Xavier, and thank you. Yeah, because it's such a big issue. But what I'd like to present, given that I work with so many of these people here and there, is that it's not just the legal and technical, which is insurmountable difficulties of having a criminal record. It's the emotional and mental consequence where these diamonds in the rough, these treasures that even some just got caught up in the wrong place at the wrong time, didn't actually do anything. And or one man just a few days ago, just literally stalked by the police, hoping to do something to him. It's like, okay, so it's challenging, but the emotional consequence is almost, I mean, I'm starting to cry. It takes years to repair the damage. So the physical survival, I mean, if even possible to repair the damage, if, survival is tough, but I see these people literally blocked to making any progress and or even survive. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We've really got to quit punishing people and we've got to help them instead. Thank you.
Absolutely. I totally agree with all of that. And thank you for sharing.
I just want to summarize a key point. I know you're just barely into your presentation, but just to understand this, the governor has just signed essentially the executive order welcoming cities and counties to just sweep away encampments. And here it is, we're learning that possibly as many as 73%, a majority of people living, whether it's in vehicles or in sleeping bags, cannot get housing fairly. And you're going to come and talk to us about fair chance housing. We know there's a shortage of affordable housing, but you were just talking about fair chance housing, which I think was the result of the ban the box movement. And maybe you can say a little more if that's true, from All of Us or None, which was to ban the request that you put on your housing application, whether or not you've had a prison record of some kind. I don't really know that much, but that's why your other speaker, who I'm sorry couldn't make it, why that organization, All of Us or None, is such an important part of this. But just to understand, as long as we're doing the right thing to release people from this system of imprisonment and racist and history, we're generating more people who are unhoused and can't and are particularly handicapped to being housed, and we're releasing them with no training, with no, I just can't even believe how bad that is, because there certainly used to be, at least some, I thought, attempt to help people in that transition from jail or prison to life again. So anyway, maybe you could speak back to that fair chance housing, and then we can take another round of questions later. Thanks.
Yeah, I think fair chance housing is really just, a lot of folks are just shut out of the housing system for reasons that are out of their control at this point. And it's just, the more we can kind of remove the discrimination in the housing market and recognize that people have served their time, they've given their restitution to the community. It's time to treat them like the human beings that they are. I think the more we can raise awareness of that, the better. And I think that kind of ties into a big part of why we're doing this plan and this campaign, which is ultimately following a number of steps. So first we designed the policies, then we've just created the plan for how to actually move forward. The stage we're in right now is building community power and community engagement so that we can push the Board of Supervisors to act. That's a really big overview of this slide, but that's at its core what this slide is talking about. We we need our city governments and our county government officials to actually step forward and take an action to support this legislation and support what this legislation could be. And to do that, we want to have as big of a community support as we possibly can. So we're reaching out to organizations like your organization to talk through the reentry housing plan and see if we can count on your support as part of our coalition. So that's the ask that we ultimately have, is who's willing to be part of the coalition to support it, and a coalition that still continues to center the lives and needs of formerly incarcerated residents. And so I'll let you all kind of decide that in your organization and your processes, what that looks like and what that could be. But that's the big reason why I'm here today, is to really build more ground support for the coalition. I know I really wanted to keep today's presentation pretty brief and like at a high level. But it'll be the start of an ongoing dialogue, I believe, over the course of the next like year or so. But I'll pause there and then take questions again.
Kristen, your hand.
I wanted to ask Xavier if you've been in contact with the churches. My church, it was painful, but we came through, have converted our parsonage, the pastor's residence, into, I think it will be a 9-unit housing for people getting out of prison.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know how many other churches have this habit, but at least in the Methodist Church, I guess it's been customary to provide a place for the minister to live. But nowadays, a lot of ministers are not living in the parsonage. They've got their own places. They're happy. They often even commute to churches. And so the churches have turned to like renting out the parsonages just for more money. But it would seem to me that if there's a little slew of these parsonages running around town, they could all be converted, and it would just change the source of the money to the church. If the church didn't have to give up the money, but it could be gotten from another source. That's all I have. Thank you.
Yeah, we definitely are working to partner with churches and religious organizations. But our lists are not exhaustive, so any group that you all want to recommend to us or connect us with would be more than welcome.
We actually work with LSPC. They were the ones who took over the contract and have rehabbed the house.
Okay, awesome.
What is LSPC?
Oh, Legal Services for Prisoners with Children.
Oh, okay. You might say a few words about the wonderful sponsors that they are for All of Us or None. Well, there's another raised hand. 734-3787. Can you identify yourself, and then you can ask your question? Then I'll move ahead to Nancy Stevens. Welcome, Nancy. Glad you could get on. And then our phone caller can speak next.
Hi, thanks Xavier so much. I just met with the coalition, the Inland Coalition on Aging. I live in the Palm Springs area. I'm just wondering if there are any statewide, county to county partnerships and coalitions, or if you have one in particular that you think we should partner with, who are doing the research and the work across the state, not just individual counties.
Yeah, I think the first one that comes to mind is All of Us Are Done's Abolish Bondage Collectively or sort of campaign.
What is it? Do you mind to put that in the chat for me when you have the chance? Sorry.
No, that makes sense.
We have our master plan for aging conference next month, and so I'd like to share this information.
I just thank you, Nancy. I just want to point out again to all of us that the governor created the state approved a master plan on aging in California. This happened over the last couple of years. Our chapter and all the chapters of Gray Panthers and our allies, CARA, were part of this in lobbying for certain for certain features. And the fact that this plan contradicts the executive order that just went out. It's executive order 124, which again, not just bans encampments on state land, but encourages sweeps. I mean, these are in direct contradiction when we know about the ages of people. Anyway, coming out and the lack of housing. The whole thing makes, of course, I could say it makes no sense, but we know a lot of things don't. Any thoughts about that, Xavier, about allies and creating more pressure on the supervisors versus the state?
Absolutely. I think we need to partner on all of these sorts of issues that are coming up, because at the end of the day, the groups and organizations that hold power and are creating a more conservative and more limited society, they're working together and they're coordinated and they attack
That's right.
at all levels, all at the same time. And we have to be willing to kind of like put the work and the time and the effort in to kind of work in unison and work collaboratively to fight those things. A little bit to the previous question. So the Abolish Bondage Collectively campaign it's basically looking at the California Constitution, which still provides an exception for the slavery clause if you're working as an incarcerated person, and the wages they pay incarcerated folks for like fighting our fires and doing so much work is at like 15 cents an hour. It's something really ridiculous that really doesn't provide any sort of sustainability or place to land on their feet when they exit the incarceral system. So they were able to successfully get a constitutional amendment to go on the ballot. It's Proposition 6 that would undo that specific amendment provision of the Constitution.
Do you want to say that again?
Sure. So on the ballot is going to be Proposition 6, which is going to repeal the exemption of slavery for work done by people who are incarcerated. I don't know how to phrase it exactly because I haven't been super involved with the campaign, but it's definitely something that I would support as well.
Thanks. 343-787.
This is Afi.
Hello, Afi. Welcome.
Hi, dear one. How are you?
We're good. We're good.
Xavier, first of all, I want to thank you for your work. I appreciate you. But I want to talk about the prison system again, is that I was a parole agent for the state of California many years ago, in the 60s and the 70s. And it was called a rehabilitation center. And they stopped it around the 70s and called it a prison system, a punishment system. And unless we can get that change back, where we can look at these people as human beings who made a mistake and that they can be rehabilitated back into our community. But the state prison systems today consider them simply a punishment system. What are your thoughts about that?
I totally think we need to go back to rehabilitation and not use prisons as a punishment. I think we should just abolish prisons altogether, but that's a whole other conversation. I think there are much better, more effective ways to get people to kind of see the harm that they've caused in community and get them to kind of change their ways. And there's been so much study on how to do that effectively in other spaces, but because of the prison industrial complex, we don't have those conversations in our prison systems with our elected officials at any level of government, which is a shame. I think there's some work that's being done in California, but I think most of it is still under the idea of prisons as punishment rather than rehabilitation, which is unfortunate. But I'm also not 100%. I'm more of a housing expert than a incarceration or like conviction history sort of expert. So I would definitely defer to some of my other colleagues to have more robust and kind of like structured responses to that question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Afi. We have an abundance now. Let's see. I see Arlene and Cheryl have your hands up. And thank you all for these questions. Are you ready to take more questions, Xavier?
Sure.
Okay.
I love questions. It's my favorite thing to do is respond and give context. So happy to
Hello,
take
Xavier. I've seen you before. I've heard you before. You're just like really awesome. And I love this work that you're really, digging into. One of the things I hear you talk about is the housing. And in collaboration with the housing, in order to keep housing, because there's not going to be subsidies, right? So if you don't get subsidies, how are you going to sustain your housing? So is there collaboration with any kind of workforce development? Because many people who have certain hits on their record, depending on what it is, are unable to get licenses. And so when you look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, what jobs are available that can a population be moved into that's needed in the state of California? Is there any collaborative work being done on that? That's one.
Not in a deep sense. I think we first were focusing really on the question of housing specifically before we kind of expanded it to other things. But I think as the coalition grows and expands, I think there's possibility of kind of having those conversations as well. I would defer to the formerly incarcerated folks who are leading it as well, because I think they would. I just think it's a decision kind of best left to them. But I don't see anything that's going to build the coalition. I think is probably something they'd be willing to kind of be partners with and build messaging on too. So that's at least my initial take.
Got it. And one other thing is as we're talking about rehabilitating people, one of the things that I don't really hear a lot of conversations about is family reunification, especially with the huge rate of children being extracted from the households. I mean, I know about Community West, I know about a lot of these organizations, SC, et cetera, but a lot of children have been extracted from the households. And in order to rebuild the community, is there any conversations about family reunification? Or is there any work being done with that?
That definitely is something that we've been talking about. I think in the context of fair chance housing, because a lot of the families are like the father or mother are unable to actually be housed with the children because they have a conviction history and the children don't. So you force them to either not have a place to live or to not live with their children and not be as much of a part of their children's lives is one of the big kind of challenges with the current housing system without having fair chance housing. So we think that's kind of like one of the biggest reasons to actually support fair chance housing is because of family reunification and being able to get people inside the same households.
And so is there also conversations about the Department of like Social Services, the Child Welfare Department? I don't know what it's called here in California, but like Child Protective Services. Is there conversations or is there work being done in that arena as well to change some of the systemic policies that are barring families from living together?
Not yet. Again, the scope of the work so far has been specifically on housing and the intersection of housing and criminal justice. But I think it'd be something that the group would be open to. It's just, I think the challenge is there's intersections with a lot of different things that this particular set of laws has, and we could kind of go into a lot of different directions in different areas and constantly kind of growing the solutions we're looking for. But at the same time, we need like kind of a more narrow focus to get something actually be passed by the Board of Supervisors. So I would say we definitely want to continue the conversations and see what really are the kind of like secondary and tertiary priorities for the campaign, and kind of make assessments of how much do we add additional components to the plan versus focusing on the basic elements that we're looking at right now.
Okay, so strategically, your focus is on the housing, and you will expand at a later date once this gets passed.
Essentially, I think that decision is kind of more up to the group, but we just haven't had talks yet about how do we build to other areas as well.
Oh, okay. Well, I'd love to register. I'm already following All of Us and None of Us and most of the organizations that do this work. I would really love to be at the table with conversations with anything that I can contribute from other organizations that are kind of intersecting.
Arlene, I'm going to say let's talk follow-up, both personal and collective follow-up a little bit later. There's two other hands up. I want to go back to if you're good, we'll get back to this. This topic is not the end end of the conversation. 5680794. Can you identify yourself and then ask your question, please? *6 to unmute.
Bessie, this is Miss Cecilia Cunningham.
Oh, Miss Cecilia, I have not memorized your phone number. I apologize. Okay.
Don't worry. I just wanted to ask the gentleman that's presenting this report. I wanted to know, have you heard anything about Mayor Bonta? He has the bill out. I can't remember what number it is, because the bill did come out before and passed that certain people would have their record erased. But it wasn't for everybody. And I feel that everybody should have a chance to be able to have a good life, as long as they're willing to be rehabilitated. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to know, do you know anything about that bill? It's supposed to be for felony people, everybody.
I don't actually know, but I'm happy to look into it.
But please, I appreciate that, because that's very important. Because a lot of people are out there trying their best to try to get good jobs. And some of them are well educated, but they will not hire them, and that's wrong. And that's why we have so much of crime in our communities. So we need to do all we can to try to help rehabilitate people that really wants to do good in life. Because right now, San Quentin, they're demolishing their building right now. They're trying to build some rehabilitation places for the prisons where they, more academic studies for them. So anyway, I would love to know more about just what they're doing to try to help those people that do have felonies and other crimes. And also with their housing and whatnot, because they definitely need housing.
Miss Cecilia, Xavier is nodding his head. Just want you to know.
Oh, thank you.
Xavier Johnson, if I know you didn't get to look at the invitation, but he is with the Just Cities initiative.
Institute.
Institute.
Okay. Now, why are you nodding your head? What's going on, Xavier?
I was just in agreement with a lot of what you were saying, and it was resonating with me.
Well, thank you, honey. Thank you. So, because we're going to have to get this system fixed, because we live in an unjust society, and something going to have to be done.
I agree.
Thank you, Ms. Cecilia. I can see we have to revisit this topic. I'm really glad.
Yes.
Thank you, Xavier, for bringing it to us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You must come again, please. Give us an update.
I'll be happy to.
Thank you so much.
I see 3 hands. Kristen Loomis, Afi, and Nancy. You've all spoken at least once, but I don't see other hands. But when I do, if I see someone who hasn't spoken and has a question, I will interrupt this flow. But otherwise, Kristen.
Hi, I have a question. I used to be a librarian. So my question is, as I've lived in Oakland, I've been here about 10 years. I have heard of LSPC. I've heard of All of Us or None. And then your organization, and also somebody mentioned Community West, are totally new to me. And what I would like to know is it possible to get a listing for everybody in one place so that folks know what is going on? I was thinking of something like the United Seniors of Oakland and Alameda County, because they put out that nice resource book. And I thought, there should be a heading for ex-prisoner people. These are the resources available. I suppose maybe there's enough of a grassroots thing that everybody knows what's going on if you're within the system. But for people like me coming from the outside, it's really confusing. Why are all these groups? Which are the best ones to work for? where to go for somebody I know who maybe needs to connect. Anyhow, that's it. Not terribly important, but thank you.
No, it's important because I think at the end of the day, even if we do have laws protecting folks, it doesn't do anything if they're not aware of how to access them or how to use the tools and services that are there. So I think we could probably get some resources together. I will say though that Just Cities doesn't do like direct services. We don't like necessarily help find people individual access to housing. We focus primarily on the policy lens and creating
Okay.
conversations on the policy.
Okay.
And we support the other organizations that do offer direct services. So when we do funding for the grants that we sign up for, we always have some funding for like All of Us or None, for Asian Prisoner Support Committee, for Courage, and for BOSS, Building Opportunities for Self-Sufficiency, as a part so that they can provide those services and do that work, but we don't necessarily do that ourselves.
Thank you.
Nancy and then Afi.
I'd just like to know what your thoughts are on, I guess on what my thoughts are. I personally think that there must be a heart change, like a statewide, nationwide, community-wide heart change. Instead of having that label of ex-convict or ex-prisoner or, that type of thing, they're people. And also there must be a balance, I believe, instead of putting so much emphasis or all the emphasis on rehabilitation. What about welcoming people back into our lives, into our communities again? That's all.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense as well. I think a lot of the language I use, I kind of use based on kind of the work with some of the formerly incarcerated folks, but I think envisioning a world that's much more ideal and much more inclusive is definitely a piece of what this work takes. And I think the goal is truly to have the most inclusive space we can, and recognizing that like a lot of the people who are incarcerated were wrongfully incarcerated in the first place too, and have spent years serving a system that has not served them in any way, shape, or form. So I appreciate those comments for sure.
This is Arlene again. Can Xavier tell us like when the meeting will be held regarding this particular subject matter? Like, can we participate, or can we assist? Can we bring others? What can we do?
Yeah, so we'll be scheduling a partners meeting. So all the folks who are interested in being involved, I put my email in the chat. Feel free to shoot me an email if you'd like to be involved, or you can sign up on our website for either one should work, but maybe preferably send me the email, and we'll include you all in the partners list, so that, and we'll schedule a meeting. We're going to do like a doodle or a when to meet to decide when the best time is, but that'll be coming up soon in the next like week or two, since we've been getting a critical mass of organizations signing up for it.
Thank you so much.
Xavier, if you see people in hands, go ahead and call on them. But
I think only thing I
Afi,
see is Afi.
yeah, was that a hand from? There we go.
Oh, okay. Xavier, I just wanted to ask you, okay, let me say this first. It's been during the Dust Bowl, and there was great poverty that occurred. The government got involved and went to the camps and set up camps with medical care, educational care.
We just lost your voice.
Educational care, job care, to integrate people back into community. But the government went straight to the camps and set up. Because what happens is, if they don't get involved, and I'm not saying that they should not be independent, But at the same time, like we have programs where criminal things happen, whereas they gangsters get into the little spaces that they have. Do you see anything like that occurring again?
I don't think now. I think the spaces are like the way we set up our spaces and things are done with like RFPs and there's enough bureaucracy right now that I don't see that happening again. But I think it's definitely something to always be kind of on the lookout for.
Thank you.
I think it's one of the blessings that us chronologically gifted, well-endowed people have is we have a memory, even though many of us were not alive in the Dust Bowl era. We might actually have seen these large tents and camps that the government set up. I think we also know about, this is again a little before my time, but University Village and what was then called Cordonices Village, in which the federal government actually forced the city of Berkeley and Albany to lease the government land to create apartments for war worker housing. So I just want to second, we're a long ways off, or we have been a long ways off from the idea that government intervenes. But what do you think about this administration and some of the tenants' rights steps that Harris has and Biden previously have put into, but Harris has put into her platform? Do you see any progress with that might be possible?
I think there's some, but there's a lot more that could be done that I don't think the administration is going to actually do. I think it'd be better than a Trump administration for sure, but and I do think a Harris administration would be better than a Biden administration as well. But I don't know. I think what would really be nice is if they just actually started reinvesting in housing at the federal level. That's something that I think has been needed for quite some time, and there just hasn't been enough resources from the federal government to provide and support its current programs, let alone the programs that we need to have a housing system that is equitable and just.
Why don't you go ahead and finish any slides or bring back the slides you wanted to emphasize? And I was hoping for a segue into our next speaker, but you are our star right now and will be. So anyway, why don't you finish up and we'll take a third round of questions, in 10 or 15 minutes.
I guess I'll finish up with this, that the real reason we're here is because there's been a massive shift in the makeup of the Board of Supervisors. We had the votes to pass fair chance housing before, and they did the first reading, but with the new makeup of the Board of Supervisors, they didn't even vote for fair chance housing, which to me doesn't cost anything to landlords at all to actually implement fair chance housing. It's like, the reason that happened is because of the pandemic and because of the moratorium that was put in place. The landlords responded really heavily against the moratorium and spent a lot of money to change the makeup of the Board of Supervisors. And because of that, we don't necessarily have a friendly environment. So what we really need is as much grassroots support as we possibly can to shift the perspective of the Board of Supervisors. And so we're working on all the different ways we can to really build that support. But I think that's the key takeaway, is that it's going to take people power to really undo a lot of the damage that's been done at the county level.
So can you tell more specifics about this fair chance housing bill that you're hoping the supervisors, that you want the supervisors to pass?
Yeah, we went through, I mean, it's been through a lot of iterations.
What's in it and give a little more specific about that campaign, if you would.
Yeah, so it basically would have prohibited background checks in all instances except for where the property owner lived at the property and it was 4 units or less at the property. All other instances pretty much would have allowed for criminal background checks. The only other exceptions were for people on the sex offender registry and for people who have been found guilty of producing methamphetamine. And that's only because the federal government in the affordable housing space has made specific prohibitions against housing people who have conviction histories for methamphetamine. And then there's state law and federal law that protects, or not really protects, that like continues to criminalize folks who have sex offender and sex offender registry status. But besides that, it would have been a really strong version of the law. It would have prohibited the actual asking of conviction histories by the landlords, and doing so would have been a violation that would have been enforceable against the landlord. But all of that was kind of thrown away once the change in makeup of the Board of Supervisors happened, when Supervisor Valle unfortunately passed away, and when Supervisor Lena Tam took over after the other supervisor, I cannot remember their name right now. Yeah. But I think the main thing is just we're looking to build coalition. I think I just want to keep sticking to that point at the end of the day. We need people power. We need to show the Board of Supervisors that this is something that matters to our community. And I think part of the challenge we have is with Supervisor Carson like stepping down, and the new candidates who are stepping in. Dave Brown, thank you. With the new candidates that are stepping in, we'll have to kind of like, Carson used to be our champion for a lot of our actions at the county. I'm hoping that either John Bowders or oh my God, why am I blanking on names today? Nikki Fortunato Bass will both hopefully be willing to kind of keep championing this legislation, hopefully.
The simple concept is you're building a coalition of supporters for this fair chance housing bill or county ordinance or whatever it is that eliminates, and see, this is where I still confuse it with the ban the box campaign.
Basically ban the box, but for housing.
Okay, I see. Ban the box was for employment, where you
Correct.
had to check off, did I ever have a conviction, or did I ever, what was the wording of have I ever been convicted of a certain crime? Have I ever spent time in jail? I mean, white collar people, sometimes never go to jail. So what is we're eliminating the criminal background check, but what is the particular trigger for that on an application for housing?
It just eliminates the question altogether. Like, they're not even allowed to ask about conviction history.
Okay. Except for these two exemptions.
Exactly.
For small landlords who live in a fourplex or less, and for those categories. Okay, so do we know, do we have any ideas as to the types of housing we want to? So right now, that's it. There's not a campaign for housing, because I do know we have Gray Panthers has been an ally to the Wood Street Commons and the Oakland's homeless advocacy working group, which has some beautiful and powerful statements about the type of camps or housing, that would be a mutual aid type of housing rather than someplace with barbed wire around it. And I just want to speak for that, essentially Wood Street Commons has a magnificent proposal that's just starting to build support. And what's required is for public land to be available, or low cost private land. But right now it's, there's no precedent for creative design of return of communities of any kind that are empowered by the residents.
To recap, there's 4 elements of the reentry housing plan that we're looking to advocate for. The 4th one is the fair chance housing piece. And that one has the most history behind it already. We've already gone through campaigns trying to get that in Alameda County. But the other 3 are, this is for Alameda County, not the Oakland Board of Supervisors. The other 3, though, we haven't had a historical campaign for them yet. They're kind of new and fresh ideas that haven't been discussed by the Board of Supervisors. And some of them we think will be likely to get some support from them relatively quickly, particularly the funding piece. But we still have to start that advocacy campaign, but we want to start it with people power.
Okay. Welcome Joe Barry and welcome Maria Soul. Maria, Joe hasn't asked a question yet, so why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, my question is the question on housing applications that's relevant just the question about convictions? I know that in the past, some housing applications, as well as employment applications, have also asked about arrests, whether people were convicted or not. Would this deal with that? Because that's a much bigger group and, opens the door to even wider span of invidious discrimination.
It would. The language is really broad in the text of the ordinance. It says that you can't make an adverse decision on the basis of anything, including arrests, as well as convictions.
Okay, good.
So they already shouldn't be doing anything based on arrests. That's a whole other issue.
Yeah. But, but they do, and they ask those questions. And unless somebody challenges, people, when they're looking for a place to live or a job, people are in a very weak position to challenge anything. You're going to sign what they put in front of you because you want the place to live, or you want the house, or you want the job. So, that's the moment when people are weakest, except maybe in a hospital bed. Thank you. Good.
Maria.
And thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm in utter rapture and gratitude that we are all sharing these heartfelt and practical questions and interests. So thank you, each and every one of you. Thank you. And Xavier, thank you. But the reason why I brought up in the very beginning the notion of what it takes to work with people that aren't just technically impaired by the legality of this, but emotionally impaired, is back to what Nancy said, how about welcoming? But then to what Betsy said, Wood Street is cognizant, like I am, of the ever so tedious, slow progression, so that these people that have either, as someone else mentioned, made a mistake, or have not only been punished by society and the system, but punished by themselves because of their guilt and shame, need to be reinvigorated, like bringing a wilted flower back to its bloom. And it takes so much time. I remember over 20 years ago, I hired a man who had committed murder. Why not? If he can. But that was the question. I always hire people from the street to give them a chance. And yet, if I'm responsible for the property, their safety, my safety, etc., I have to be so diligent and set it up so they can succeed. This whole system, my first college course was in crime and penology. And my first job when I came to California, I put in a request to be hired at San Quentin because just between you and me, don't tell anybody, I was going to release everyone, right? Because it's like, oh my God, we have got to focus on life and what it takes with our own awareness of, God, I make mistakes every day. Every day I make mistakes. Is that it? No, but we have to come together to help each other through all of this. And without that in the heart, we can make laws and then we got lawyers. And you see how far that gets you. It's got to just come from the heart, which each of us have. And again, back to my thanking you. I just had to say it. It's work. It's work. But boy, am I in it for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Xavier, so in a minute, folks, there's a lot of comments in the chat, but I wanted to ask you, Xavier, why did you choose to take this position? If you want to share something a little more about your own personal decision-making, you were very busy, I know, on the civic level, and you were a tenant lawyer. Why did you yeah, if you care to share anything from that, your experience with the group, the Just Cities, or anything you might want to share.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I wanted to go to law school in the first place was because of policy work. I wanted to change the laws because I saw through debate how all of these decisions that are made by government drastically affect the people in our society. And I learned about like, it was actually issues of the environment at the time. It was about environmental justice and environmental racism. And I saw that without people speaking up and serving the communities that need to be served the most, that government isn't going to act to protect those communities. And that made me want to pursue law school to change the law and change the policy.
Mhm.
And I took this job because this was my first time actually being able to be an activist and be someone who's speaking about the policies as opposed to being an attorney and enforcing the laws as they are. I think it's something that it's tiring work, I'll be honest. Like it's very, very frustrating when you have wins in one day and then see other people working to make setbacks in other spaces the next day. But I think I'll always be in the fight in one way, shape, or another. It's just a question of what am I specifically doing at the moment. But that's the reason I took this job, was to really be able to see what the challenges are, to empower the people who need to be empowered, and to work together to change society.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you. I just appreciate that. There's lots of comments in the chat, over 25. So I just wanted to read them aloud a little bit, or make note for those who can't see them. Jeanne Pimental, my neighbor, says she's currently providing housing for a formerly incarcerated person. It is a warm, trusting, and mutually beneficial relationship, and I encourage anyone who can do this. It can be tricky to arrange officially because of all the bureaucracy, but if you get into the network, sometimes you can fill a temporary need unofficially without breaking any laws and save someone from being lost. I can't stay for this whole meeting, but I think you can reach me through Betsy if you have questions. Yeah, I hope that's okay. Of course, Jeanne, you may have gone. I'm not entirely sure. There's so many faces and people, but yeah, if anyone's interested in knowing how to reach Jeanne, please let me know. Wow, she's going to check the recording later. Willie had to jump. He thanks you, Xavier. All of us are none. Thank you for writing this in. The Abolish Bondage Collectively campaign to end the slavery exemption for people in prisons. I did want to say someone else. Oh yes, Cheryl White sent a note that over 4,500 corporations profit from mass incarceration in the U.S. Also wanted to thank Anya, who it's shout out for social housing in Germany, says that the government is actively involved in creating tens of thousands. Here it is. German government funds social housing with over 18 billion euros. And over every year, 100,000 new flats are needed, an urgent issue. And of course, and she mentions each year 40,000 flats will fall out of the regular housing stock because, well, we'll have to find out later why. But we are part of a social housing. Our Great Panthers has been tracking, and I do want to announce maybe to even you, that the Alliance for Housing Justice is a fantastic, is my dream come true, of an alliance of both renters' rights and renters organizing groups with legal justice and legal services and policy think tanks who are mobilizing around really having a coherent social housing platform in the US. In Europe, that includes cooperative housing that is limited equity. It includes nonprofit housing and it includes public housing. And so anyway, I encourage you to look up the Alliance for Housing Justice and see if the Justice Institute would like to join, because there are members. And then here in California, Housing Now California is, and several other California-based groups, including ACE, is part of this social housing coalition. So Tenants Together being an organization we're more familiar with. So I would encourage the Justice Institute to consider how to make the most out of that existing alliance. It's not a short term, we're just doing this to pass one bill, or we're just doing this to get a bond passed. As important as that is, it's really building relationships, you know, for the long haul. So putting my pitch in, and thank you, all of you people, all of you who've put comments in the chat. You know, I want to set a moment aside, and because it looks like Leah might not be able to make it. Not that you have to track Leah, but as your rent board colleague, did you happen to know whether did you or she ever get a chance to speak about her joining us? Okay, she said she was ready. I sent her email invitation, so we'll hopefully.
I'll just shoot her a text.
Yeah, thanks. I want to say, is there any last words, Xavier? I don't know if you have to leave. You certainly don't have to leave us if you want to stick around for the last 40 minutes, half hour, and then we have social time. Any last words, final words, reminders that you'd like to share?
I just think one of the things that I've kind of grown to realize more is that if you really want something to happen, it takes a lot of energy and a lot of organizing to fight to make it happen. Even if you have support from the elected officials, and even if it's something that they already are willing to do, to go from idea to actual action steps, it takes a lot of communication and organizing and sending messages out to folks and calling folks and contacting them. But that when you do that, you do get to win at the end of the day. But you just putting in context the effort it takes, I think, is what I really want to do kind of with this audience. But I think this coalition already, the folks we have, is ready to be on the ground and fighting. And I'm looking forward to being on the ground with you all and fighting as well.
Who else have you reached out to at this point?
I've reached out to a number of organizations. There's like, at least there's quite a few. And then there's organizations that like some of my colleagues are reaching out to and building the connection for. So I think we'll have a nice coalition at the end of the day. But it is going to take work though.
And I think you can see there's people here who are already involved in that work, the broader work. And I think we'll have a good follow-up conversation. There's, I'm not sure if you have a chance, there's multiple questions, if multiple comments. This is like the cheering section, but Nancy mentioned a documentary called by Dr. Gabor Mate, covers the trauma aspects in the housing and unhoused, and follows some humans formerly incarcerated and addiction recovery supports. Wish he was appointed in, anyway, so recommendation, not the name, but if someone has a chance to look up Gabor, Gabor Mate, Mate, with an accent. Maybe we'll get the name of that. I want to ask, that Dirk, because you may not be able to read the chat, and it might interfere. Do you want to ask a question, Dirk? Then I'll just pause. Well, thank you. Let's unmute and give Xavier a cheer, and we'll carry on with a follow-up conversation. Yeah, so applaud, cheers, hands. We're so used to being muted.
Yay.
Yay.
Xavier.
I really appreciate the
Thank
depth
you.
of the interactivity today.
Thank you, Xavier.
Thank you so much.
You must come again.
I will for sure.
Thank you.
We'll
Thank
hold
you
a
all.
chair for you. Remember, we're all on the road to becoming Gray Panthers. No age limit, no age limits. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I am now going to suggest a short stretch break and want to turn, I need to take a small stretch break, and I'm wondering if our second guest will be able to join us. Because while I'm moderating here, I'm not easily able to send text messages. I haven't heard back from her about getting the link. But I know she's gonna, maybe I can fill in a little bit. I see hands up. Norma, did you want to respond to our previous speaker? And
Always. Are you gonna get up and go take a break or what? I got time.
We got it covered, Betsy.
okay,
break.
great. Anyone
Okay.
else who needs a break will come back in a few minutes.
Well, I just came on, so I'm good.
So I wrote you a note, everybody. Hi, Miss Cecilia. It's nice to
Hi,
see
how
you.
I'm gonna have to leave. I have to leave this afternoon because today is my birthday, and I will be
Happy
celebrating.
Happy
birthday.
birthday.
That's a good reason to stay here and tell us stuff and think with us, though, on your birthday. That's no excuse.
Before I leave, I want to ask, how is Carol doing? Because I called her and left a message on yesterday.
I'm good. I'm a little bit woozy.
Oh, Carol's on?
So
Oh,
I have
good.
a, yeah.
Okay. That's a blessing.